This is Mr. Elmhorst with the help video for the Unit 3 test review. We're looking at the advanced 6th grade math students. So as we go through this review, you are focused on just numbers and operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. And how do we put all this together to solve for each one of the problem situations? So the first one, it helps to go to what the question is asking. What is the cost of just the shoes? All right, the rest of the context gives you information that's going to point you in the direction on finding the cost of the shoes. So Elliot has some money. He bought some shorts. He bought some shoes, and then he got some money back. So we're going to start with the $60. Start with the $60, and then we got two pairs of shorts. So that means two of these. So we spent $36 on just the shorts. But the question is asking about the shoes. So we're going to remove that cost from what Elliot had. We're going to take that stuff out, and that's going to give us 4 borrowing. There's $24 left over. Now, the other piece of information is how much money we got back. Well, there was $24, but we got $7 back out of the $60. So that finding the difference will tell us how much we paid for the shorts. So we're going to do a little borrowing going across because we need to subtract 745, but we don't have numbers big enough to subtract from. So that's going to give us 9 and then 3. So 10 minus 5, 9 minus 4, and then 13 minus 7, which is going to give us 6, and then 1 left over. So just the shoes were $16.55. Once we remove all the other money from the $60 that we started with. Okay. All right, number 2, there's a couple of different ways we can go about solving this, but we have a fraction, a mixed number, and we have a decimal. So a batch of muffins, 5 1/4 cups of flour, but we don't need one whole recipe. We need a half of a batch or half of the recipe. So 0.5, another number for 0.5 is 1/2. But if we don't know all of that, there's some things we could do. 5 1/4, if we multiply by the amount that we need, which is 0.5, that will tell you how much flour that we actually need out of the total. So 5 1/4 times 0.5. Now, either you can use fractions or you can use decimals. I'm actually going to use this video to show the decimal way of going about this. So 5 1/4 is going to be 5.25 times 0.5. So some students were getting confused with the decimals here. Focus on the numbers that are being multiplied. So we have 525 being multiplied by 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26. So first thing, can we multiply the 1-digit and 3-digit number? Now, put the decimal place values. You can look and see where they're at. You can count 1, 2, 3 decimal place values. Now we're going to take those and then put them together and put them in our answer. 1, 2, 3. So our answer, how much flour are we going to need? We're going to need 2 whole cups, and we're going to need 625 thousandths of a cup. So that 625 thousandths is also, as a fraction, going to be 625 over 1,000, and 625 out of 1,000 can simplify to 125 times 5 and 125 times 8. So that fraction can be simplified to 5/8. So where is this decimal value coming from as a fraction? It is coming from 5/8. So we're going to need 2 cups and 5/8 of a cup. There's a couple of students in my 7th period class. They were a little nervous about the fractions. Some of the fractions you're just going to have to deal with. So multiplying a fraction with a fraction, that's where we're going to have to do that. Sometimes you can change fractions to decimals to make it easier, but this one, fractions to decimals, would not make it easier at all. So we're going to focus on dividing the fraction, and the first fraction, 1121, go ahead and write it down. 1121 is being divided by 2/7. And we learned something that if we're dividing by 2/7, dividing by 2/7 gives us the result of the same result as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we change this dividing of a fraction to a multiplying problem, and we can do that with every dividing fraction problem. We can change it to the multiplying by the reciprocal. And the quick strategy that students remember is we keep the first fraction the same, we change the multiplication, and then we flip or reciprocal the second fraction. Now we just multiply straight across. So 11 times 7 is 77. 21 times 2 is going to give us 42. So now we look up and down at that fraction to see if we can simplify it. 7 and 7 and 42, both of these can be divided by 7. So 7 times 11 gives you 77. 7 times 6 gives you 42. So we can simplify that fraction by taking out the factor. And now we have simplified 11/6. And then we take the whole numbers out of it. 6 goes into 11 one whole time. And 6 times 1 is 6. We subtract to find the remainder. And that is going to give us 1 and 5/6 left over for this fraction. We're multiplying with the parentheses and the number outside the parentheses. So there's 295, which is the longer number. Notice I'm going to ignore the decimal for right now. I know that I'm multiplying 42 times 295. So let's focus on the multiplying, the 2-digit, 3-digit number. 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. 2 times 9 is 18, plus 1 is 19. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So when you are done with this first digit, then you are done with the first row. So now we need to move over to the second row. We're multiplying the 4, so we need to create a new row down below. So 1 digit, 2 digits. Now we're multiplying 4 times 5, which is 20. 4 times 9, 36 plus 2 is 38. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. We finished multiplying the 2 digits there. Now we're going to add up 0 plus nothing, 9 plus nothing, and then 8 plus 5. So if we multiply it correctly, we should have 12, 12390. Now we look at the decimal place values, 1, 2, 3. and then we put those decimal place values on our answer. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to double check that answer to verify. All right, numbers look good. So it would be 12.39, and you can drop the 0 off, and it's still going to be correct. Okay, what would the change be for the meal below if you paid with a $20 bill? Okay, so here is the meal. How do we find the cost of the meal? We're going to add them. We're going to add them all up. So we have 8 plus 9, that's 17, plus 5 is going to be 22. Going to carry the 2. 9 plus 9 is 18, plus 2 is 20, plus 4 is 24. So we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it looks like we spent $13.42. Now, how much change would there be? $20 is the whole numbers, and then we're going to line up the whole numbers and then the decimal place values. Then we need to borrow going across. 10 minus 2 is 8. We borrowed 1 here, so 9 minus 4 is 5. We also borrowed here, so 9 minus 3 is 6. And we also borrowed here, so that's going to be 0. I'm going to double check my answer. Okay, everything looks to be pretty good. How much was poured into each cup? So it looks like we're starting with 68 and 1/5 ounces. And even though there's fraction and fraction here, we can still work with decimals. So 68 and 1/5, 1 out of 5 is 2 out of 10. And it looks like we're pouring equally into 4 cups, but then there's still some juice, lemonade left over. So we're going to take away what was left over. So we have 6 and 3/5. And then we can divide that by 4 to see how much was in each cup. We're going to borrow. 2 cannot subtract 6, so we're going to borrow from the next place value. So now we have 12 minus 6, 7 minus 6, and 6 minus nothing. So this is how much was poured into the cups. How many cups were there? So we're going to divide that equally into cups. 4 goes into 6 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 goes into 21 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And we're left with a remainder of 1. And then bring the 6 down. Bring the decimal up into your answer. So it looks like there's 15 ounces or just over 15 ounces in each cup. Evaluate the expression below. So we have 4.5 minus 1 and 5/6. So we have 4.5 minus 1 and 5/6. We have 4 minus 1 and 5/6. Now, because the 5 out of 6, that number is a little tricky when you're converting it. 6 has a common factor with 2. So I'm actually going to leave these in decimal form or in fraction form and then just convert that to 6. So 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. And now we can subtract the whole number from the whole number, and then we're going to look at subtracting the fraction from the fraction. So this first fraction, we need to subtract 5/6 but we don't have 5/6. We only have 3/6. So we're going to borrow a fraction of 6 from the whole number, and then we can subtract from there. So 3 minus 1 is going to give us 2. We took one of the whole numbers, put it into the fraction. So now we have 3 plus 6 is 9. And then 9 minus 5 is going to be 4. And that's 4 out of 6. And then this can be simplified by a factor of 2. So we end up with 2 and 2/3 once we subtract it. Number 8, straight up adding decimals. Line up your decimal place value. Whole numbers over whole numbers and tenths value over tenths. So we're just going to add those up. I'm not going to spend much time on that. Number 9, if you multiply this number by a number, question mark, which one is going to be less? Which one will give us as a result of less? So basically what it's saying is 5 times 1 is going to equal 5/8. 5/8 times 1, the result by multiplying is going to be equal. But if you multiply by a number that is greater than 1, then that is going to be greater than what you started with. And that is also true if you multiply by a number that is less than 1. If you multiply by a number that is less than 1, then the result is going to be less. So this number 5/8 is greater than 1. 7/8 is less than 1. 7/5 is greater than 1. And 5/4 is greater than 1. So which one is going to be less? It's multiplying by a number that is less than 1, and 7/8 is less than 1. And the last one, the fraction 32 over 10 can be simplified. Divide by 2, divide by 2. That gives you 16 over 5. And this fraction, 16 divided by 5, in a calculator, 16 is divided by 5. That would also be true.